During this week's episode, we will speak with someone who has lived experience with epilepsy. The difference between this interview and maybe some that you might find that are posted by patients themselves is that this person actually has a confirmed diagnosis of seizure disorder, had drug resistant epilepsy, and was able to make a decision and move forward in a way that now he is seizure free. This person has taken upon himself to share his story, to be an inspiration to everyone. And we hope that during this interview, perhaps someone going through a similar journey might find some inspiration from this. Again, this podcast does not aim to be a replacement for your interaction with your healthcare provider. This podcast is not medical advice. This podcast is only here to provide awareness for epilepsy, seizure disorder, things people are going through, and how they were able to get through their particular journey. Although we'll never know how many patients or people this might potentially help. Hopefully, this will be an inspiration to you so that you can make a decision in your journey that allows you to move forward in a way that you are able to take back control away from epilepsy and gain some freedom from the disorder. Let's get into it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
Of
having us.
course.
Today's podcast is again in our series along the lines of epilepsy awareness. Talking with your healthcare provider is important, but it doesn't quite hit the same as talking to somebody who has lived experience. So this morning, we are going to talk with somebody who has lived experience with epilepsy just to hear perspectives, hear all about the journey, maybe some things that, he's found to be helpful along the way. And hopefully this will help somebody else along their journey. This morning, we also have with us Kim. Kim, if you want to go ahead and
Hello.
introduce yourself.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kim. I am an epilepsy nurse. I've been an epilepsy nurse for almost 30 years. And I think that this podcast will help so many people because, as Dr. Morehill said, we can talk a lot about our experience with epilepsy, but people want to hear it from the people that actually have epilepsy and their own personal journey. And so I'm excited about today's podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. And our guest is James. Welcome.
I'm James Smith. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday morning to share your epilepsy journey.
Of course, of course.
Yep. I know there's so many other things you could be doing on a Sunday morning, probably your day off, but you decided to spend it with
Uh,
us helping people.
that's first goal in life.
So as we think about November being Epilepsy Awareness Month, you kind of have had a triumph. I met you a few years ago. You came to our clinic because you had been referred for a condition known as drug resistant epilepsy. Right. So you had been taking
Yes.
medications and things weren't working out. You still were having seizures, and somehow you found your way all the way to our clinic. So if you want to just start off by talking about, how your condition, like how it came to be, how did you find out that seizure disorder or epilepsy was your diagnosis?
Um, it all started when I was 21 years old. I was living in North Alabama. I come down to North Florida to visit some family, and I was in Academy Sports shopping when I had my first seizure. I
Hmm.
was totally unaware of it. I finally came to several hours later in the hospital finding out that I'd actually had 2 seizures. I'd been to the hospital, overlooked, released, went back to the same store where I had a second, and that's when I
Mhm.
came to in the hospital was the second one. They run every test, meningitis, everything. Could not find an issue. And it lasted for 8.5 years. I went through, unfortunately, I did not have health insurance, so nobody really wanted to see me. And that was very, very depressing. You know, when somebody doesn't want to help you, you really don't want to help yourself. And that was the first mistake I made.
Mhm.
Really was, because I started getting discouraged. And after finding doctor after doctor that just couldn't find an answer with medicine, I got referred up to Dr. Morehill and Dr. Viley and the team there in Augusta, and my life was changed.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. So James, I have a question for you. Did they start you on seizure medications after you had the first 2 seizures? Were you started on medicine immediately?
I was not. I was not. Say, it was one of those, nobody's seen an issue.
Yeah.
It happened that 2 times, and then I went for, it was several months,
Mm,
and then started.
I
Mhm.
see.
And by that time, I was too far gone.
So you
And
I
so
had,
had
I'm sorry, so they started you on medicine then several months later after you had the first 2 seizures.
yes.
I see.
right.
They tried me on Ativan several times a day. That just wouldn't work. And then every other doctor, not having health insurance, really didn't want to mess with me. So I was really on my own for a long time there.
So I guess within epilepsy, or when you think about seizure disorder, um, when we think about somebody who has two events in one day, um, our nomenclature kind of would call that one event. Um, some people would consider that still to be one event. So I could see for some neurologists why they wouldn't start medications
Mm,
after the first, because they would consider that like a first event, right? And then so they do the workup, and I guess that they didn't find anything
No.
abnormal at all. And then so you didn't get started on medication until you had the second separate event, not in the same 24 hours, but a second separate event. That was a few months later, and
Yes.
then you got started on medication,
Then I
right?
got started on medication and then
Hmm.
lost the doctor. And
Yep. And then
mhm.
in terms of medications, how many did you try?
um, I would say I tried the Lamotrigine, the Keppra, the Ativan. I cannot remember the other name of the one. It was a very odd name. All in
Four
all, I want to say it
something.
was five,
Five. Five,
Mm,
five.
four or
mhm.
five.
And then so during this time, taking medications, getting frustrated at this point because you're taking medications and you
Oh,
expect that things are going to go down to zero, zero seizures, and that just didn't happen like that for you, right?
oh no. I mean, honestly, in the beginning, I had that mindset of a lot of people. The seizures showed up and they would just disappear,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case. So,
Mm,
you were somebody that I've always known who wants to work. You want to be functional. You want to
Oh,
contribute. You want to be self-reliant, self-sufficient. Walk me through that journey of how that must have happened for you if you're having seizures and then trying to still work.
that was a challenge. Um, Mentally, it was much more complicated going back to work than it was physically. I could deal with the bumps, scrapes, you know, all the bruising was physical, but mental health is more important, and that really beat me down. But once I told myself I was going to do this, I'm going to do it. And so I just made myself
Mhm.
work through. It was some of the hardest things I've really done. I mean, because it's hard to tell yourself when everything is going south to head north.
Yeah.
When you're down, you just want to stay down.
So, did you have a job that put you at risk if you did have a seizure?
Oh,
Was your employer concerned about you hurting yourself while working?
oh yes. Say, I actually done heating and cooling. And so I was in attics under houses. I
Mm,
was very, very lucky to not have any incident while working, but
Mhm.
it was definitely a struggle. Definitely a struggle. Something that probably shouldn't have been risked, but that's where, you have to look at your pride and what is actually best. And I had a little issues, as with anybody would, I guess.
Yeah.
were they aware that you had epilepsy?
Oh yes, they were aware.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
They were aware. They were understanding. They still, as anyone would place limitations. But for me, my only issues was I would just have a seizure. There would be no onset, no notice. It would just happen.
So you didn't
Yeah.
have an aura, just came out
In
of
the
the blue.
beginning, no, I did not.
Gotcha. And
Just
I
came out of the blue.
sometimes early in the diagnosis of epilepsy when you're going through it, those auras may also be difficult to recognize, right? Cuz like now
Yes,
you suddenly have this brand new diagnosis that, you have to learn how it's going to affect your body.
of course. I mean, having seizures, epilepsy really allowed me to understand my body a lot more, to listen to it a lot more.
Mhm,
Mhm.
Those little ringings in your ear that you would think is
mhm.
normal really wasn't normal. You just played it off. I never really seen that was potential for the onset of a seizure. Was for someone without epilepsy, you don't think anything about that. And then that onset feeling, everything slows down. That's what I feel. And then I know other people that see me see things that happened before. Like others would tell me before a seizure, I would start smacking my lips,
Mhm.
Mhm,
would just start chewing on nothing,
mhm.
and then I would have a seizure, whether it be
Yeah,
focal, grand mal. It just varied.
Right.
yeah.
A lot of seizures look differently, and it's very hard, I think, for the public to come to terms with what things look like and that these things are seizures. So I assume there had to be a lot of education that you had to do for your family and people who are around you to let them know about these symptoms. That's what your seizures look like.
Yes, yes, because you can go online and try to
Mhm.
research as I did. No two people are the same. I mean, it's like anything, you have those mixed reviews. You have to find you. So I had to ultimately tell the ones around me, we have this baseline, and this is where I'm paying attention to me. I need you to pay attention to me. If this happens, what happens beforehand? You know, Afterwards, ask me what I remember was happening beforehand. We constantly learn from each other
Right.
in that whole situation.
Yep.
Mhm.
So you said 8 years, kind of
Yes,
trying
ma'am.
medicines, probably up on one, down on the other, off of one, onto the other. And at some point that you said that
Yes.
didn't work out for you. So, how were you able to find out that epilepsy surgery was an option for your type of epilepsy? How did that process happen?
The neurologist I was seeing wasn't able to give me the help I needed, and he referred me up to AU Health. I
Gotcha.
started seeing Dr. Marhill and the staff there, and then Dr. Volley approached me with the brain surgery option, and
Yeah.
that's when the game changed.
The-
A lot of my patients say that they didn't even know that there was surgery for epilepsy. I think oftentimes neurologists do try to treat the seizures with medications. And when, the seizures aren't controlled with medicines, I think surgery certainly should be looked at. But a lot of my patients say to me, I wish I had known about this sooner. So during the course of your 8 years, did a neurologist ever say to you, did you know that there's epilepsy surgery available? Or was it toward the end of that 8-year journey that you found out that surgery was even an option?
I was told there was surgery options, but no one knew what was going on with me, what was actually the cause. Because after all the research done there at the hospital, it was that one little tiny spot right there.
And did they find that oh, I'm sorry. Did they find that through an MRI?
It was all done through sleep study and stuff like that.
I
So it's
see.
through the epilepsy
A mixture of
monitoring unit.
EEGs.
Yep.
It was
You
all through there.
yep, you came in for long-term monitoring in the epilepsy monitoring unit, and then his seizures
Okay,
were
because
found over there.
so
And so
uh,
was that from your right temporal area?
yes, my right temporal.
Okay.
Right there
Which
above the
above the ear? Yeah, and
right there above the ear.
if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Moorhill, right temporal lobe epilepsy has the highest rate of being seizure free with surgery. Is that
That is
correct?
correct. That is correct. So, it's complicated. So, patients have to go through a lot of workup, right? Because we have to
Yeah.
figure out whether or not you are somebody who can live without
Right.
your right temporal lobe. And it just lined up with all your workup that you were able to have that part removed, and to think about epilepsy surgery being an option, that must have took some um, changing your mindset to be able to even get to that point, because I think a lot of people are not necessarily open to the idea of epilepsy surgery or having things removed. It takes some time for them to get to the point that, okay, this is probably the best option for me at this point, and I'm actually going to have an open mind about it. So, were you somebody who struggled with, coming to terms that epilepsy surgery was something that would help you and potentially give you a cure for your seizures?
Yes, I seen it as a great opportunity because once I actually found help,
Mm.
I believed in that help. It to me it was more than just a medicine. As how do I put this one? As a man, being independent, knowing I had children away, that was about the same reaction I had. It's like, wow, this is life changing. We're gonna
Mhm.
do this. You know, I it, I still don't know how to feel. I get flustered when I talk about it.
Now, did you know
Mhm.
anybody who had had epilepsy surgery, or were you the first one who was gonna go through that part of it?
I first one.
So you never reached out to anyone that had had epilepsy surgery to ask questions? Because oftentimes patients that consider surgery, they want to talk to someone that's been through it. We can tell them as much as we know as healthcare professionals, but they want to hear it from someone that's actually been through it. And so oftentimes they'll ask me, "Can you put me in touch with someone that's had epilepsy surgery? I have some questions." And so I just wondered if perhaps you had talked to someone. So that's awfully brave of you. You did
Oh,
it without talking to anyone.
don't get me wrong. I went through many of forums,
Yeah,
online chats, just
yeah,
epilepsy support groups,
yeah.
just reading, doing, but I never had any real knowing of someone. If it works
You
for
have a
someone, it can work for me.
well, you have a great story to share.
I feel it's a great one, but there are millions of better ones out there
Yeah. No, yours
and
is an
millions of
excellent one.
better ones to come.
Yours is an excellent one. You started doing awareness really, really on your own. And actually, anybody that I've had on this podcast, I reached out to them because they were some people who have already shared their journey publicly anyway. And you were somebody who was so pumped about your epilepsy surgery that was going to happen that you went and got yourself a haircut that ended with you being on the news. That's why you were talking about being on the news earlier. And I think they said,
Yeah.
was it Florida man gets a viral haircut? And
Yes.
you went and got a haircut by I think Living in the Cut barbershop, and it said basically cut right here with an arrow.
Here,
Did it really?
it right through
Yeah.
there, arrow going down.
Oh,
Yep.
that's hilarious.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. So, the funny thing is, I'm
Hey,
not sure how we found out about that. I think you told us, or maybe you showed me a picture.
yes, I ended up contacting Dr. Volley and all, letting them know that that was happening, and I'd
Okay.
seen y'all the next visit, and then I became the celebrity.
Yes, yes. Well, I thought that was really awesome because, I think that's that's the spirit of James, right? That's the spirit of, you know, I've been through this journey. I think every time you've ever come to clinic, you've been very upbeat and very enthusiastic about your journey, especially after you got epilepsy surgery. I feel like it must have really, gave you a new outlook on life. And that haircut was kind of um I wouldn't have thought when I first met you that you would have gotten it, but now that I've seen it and gotten to know you even more, it's like, okay,
Well,
yes.
well, that was that was a scary moment. I'm the one going under, but it's also a scary moment for the ones that are, doing the surgery, the ones
Right.
that are around. So let me look in the mirror and laugh,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
then when
good.
they get ready to do the surgery, let them stand there and laugh.
I love it.
I mean,
I love it.
like like I said in my interview, laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep. And
I mean,
it helps you calm down your nerves before going in too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
it does. It does. It does.
Yep.
I mean, we all got to be a kid sometimes.
Mhm.
that's right. So, James, did you have an opportunity to meet with Dr. Valet before the surgery to ask questions?
Yes, I did. I did. I had several visits with him over the course of things. Once we talked about the surgery, the study, we went through every little detail before he said, "All right, we found it.
That's good.
Let's do this if you're ready."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I know a lot of patients ask that question. Will I have an opportunity to meet with the neurosurgeon before I decide to have the surgery? And I always tell them yes. Sit down
Of
with the
course.
neurosurgeon. You don't have to make a decision right away. Sit down and ask every question that you have. Do your research on the internet, talk with your friends and family, and then make the decision. So I do think it is important to meet with the neurosurgeon before deciding that this is definitely something I want to do.
Right.
But it sounds
Oh, of
it,
course.
it sounds like though you kind of knew already though that this was something that you wanted to do.
I wanted help,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and I did. I had to sit down. I had to talk to myself, to everyone around me, to the wall, figure out, did I want to do this? Was this right? Weigh the options. And I decided it was, because I have three kids, and they have to have their father. That regardless in life, I was taking a chance. So let's just take a chance, hopefully for the better, with a
Right.
better outcome than not doing anything at all.
Right.
Right.
Right. I think it's
Because
easy.
don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
the fear of the unknown is very deterring, because that brain surgery is much more than getting a tooth pulled or anything, even breaking your leg.
Yeah. I think when I think about epilepsy surgery, I think about brain surgery. You're right, and that's actually what I was just gonna say. It would be easy to be paralyzed, so to speak, and not able to make a decision. To kind of be stuck there
Hmm.
at the point of just contemplating and not ready to move on to the next step. Did you feel like, I know your desire to get better for yourself and to get better for your family was very strong, but looking back on this, if there was something that you had to say to somebody who might find themselves in a place of drug resistant epilepsy, what would you say to that person who may be standing at a crossroads of, you know, do I just stay here or do I move forward? Was there anything that you would say to that person, or maybe something that you would say to yourself retrospectively looking back on where you were?
At that moment, I feel we have to ask ourselves. I ask myself, what makes me happy? You know, those things, those little things in life. And we all have to take chances. I've taken a chance over all these years, these months, to find answers. And all we can do is try. We got to have hope. I mean, the ball can only roll downhill for so long. There's really no way to tell anyone, try to tell anyone how to handle it other than believe that you are in control, that your epilepsy isn't. You control your life, not epilepsy.
Right.
Once you have that mindset, that for me that changed my world
Mm-hmm.
because I lived every day feeling like my seizure fanned me.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
S-
once,
So, James, was your family supportive of your decision to have epilepsy surgery?
for the most part, I did have a few that were very skeptical, not really liking the idea. And then we'll pull a man out. He essentially told me, "You're a grown man. Do what you want to do,"
Yeah.
which is my daddy's way of saying, "Good idea, boy."
Yeah.
But I definitely had very mixed emotions, but it's
Yeah.
it's natural.
It
I mean,
it is.
as
I could see that. That's where if you as a patient have decided to have surgery and you have family members that are a little bit skeptical, I would encourage them to attend some of the appointments with the neurosurgeon so that they can ask questions. Um,
of
I, I,
course,
I do see patients that are very interested in surgery, but they have family members that are a little reluctant to go down that path. And I always encourage the patients and their families meet. You can meet with the neurosurgeon, all of you, because it can be quite a conundrum for a patient if they want to have surgery, but they don't really have the support of their family. And I think it's important that everyone's kind of on the same page, and everyone has an opportunity to ask all the questions before they make an informed decision. So,
yes.
yeah.
And and for me, some of the best people to talk to about it, things were with perfect strangers because they don't know you,
Yeah.
they don't know the exact situation. You have outside perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the part where you said you decided to kind of take your control back, and that you were not going to allow epilepsy to run you, that was, I think, for me, very pivotal. And as a statement that you said, just because making the decision to move forward with epilepsy surgery, specifically in a case where it's removing a temporal lobe that could result in seizure freedom in 60 to 80% of people. Um, you could just stay stuck at fear, or you could make the decision to find a surgeon, a team that you trust, and to move forward with the option of potentially having a cure or having your epilepsy not no longer be active. Um, so how has that been for you? Because I know you've done quite well after epilepsy surgery. How has that part been? It must be like a complete, worlds of difference between then versus now.
Oh, definitely. 4.5 months after surgery, I was back working actively full time.
Wow.
No major up down lifting, obviously, bending over, but I was me again. I was I still am very conscientious of things that used to trigger. There's not that fear anymore, but still a little wonder. There will always be that wonder. But based on my results and my team, my future looks very bright. And it has stayed continuous since then. I've been able to get back to work. I'm driving. I'm being alive.
Oh, that's
I'm no
awesome.
longer stuck in a shell in a house all the time, because when you're unable to drive, unable to do without fear of having an incident, because an episode can happen anywhere, anytime.
Mhm.
Freedom
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
self, the four walls. That was the biggest thing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I think that's important what you said about you're the same person. It's just that now you don't live in fear, because a lot of patients ask, will I be the same after surgery? Will I be able to walk and talk? Will I be able to process things the same way? And so I like that statement that you're the same person, except you don't live with fear now. I really like that, because I tell my patients with surgery, they want you to be the exact same person that you are now, with the ability to walk and talk and process things. I mean, they're not going to offer you surgery unless you
Right.
can still do those things.
Right.
And that is one thing for me. After the surgery, the years of seizures, having to deal with not remembering,
Yeah.
and then after the surgery, I have a lot of memory retention now.
Sounds like this has completely changed your life for the better, right?
It has,
Is that a is it
very
is
much
that a
so.
safe statement to make?
That's very, very reservant.
Yeah, so being able to,
Say
being able to get back to work. Let's talk about the recovery, because a lot of patients have questions
Yes.
about after like a temporal lobe resection or a surgery like that, the recovery. So you
Hmm.
had your surgery, and then they would have taken you back to the ICU. But was the recovery like what you expected? Tell me about your recovery. How soon after the temporal resection did you leave the hospital?
I was in the hospital for 5 days under monitoring. Everything was good. I walked out of the hospital. I rolled out of the hospital and stepped into the car almost immediately with no real issues. I had that normal anesthesia haze.
Mm-hmm.
I was very weak. I still had severe headaches, but I spent, I would say, a good week in bed, rarely getting up, but still keeping moving. But
Hmm.
all in all, I mean, it was really a lot smoother than I ever expected. For someone to tell me that they were going to cut my skull open, and I never expected it to be as easy as it was.
Right.
For
And
such a hard decision,
Hmm.
the recovery was so much easier than I ever expected.
mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like for those patients, I almost wish that, and don't get me wrong, surgery is surgery. Surgeries have
Search.
complications. Um, that is something that is very serious that you have to talk about with your neurosurgeon, with your family, come to terms with yourself. Um, but for the most part, I almost wish those patients could see somebody after
Hmm.
having the surgery, because our brain surgery patients for epilepsy look remarkably well, considering what they've just gone
Hmm.
through in the OR.
Look, I mean, it looked like I just got a nice little smack on the side of my head.
Yeah.
I mean, just a little bit of missing hair and
Yep.
Yeah.
some stitches. I
Yep.
mean, you never, no one would have ever guessed
Yep.
Yeah.
that's what had happened.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, a 5-day recovery, that's awesome. I know a lot of patients do ask me, "What is the recovery time?" And I tell them anywhere between 3 and 5 days. I have seen patients
Yes.
go home as soon as 3 days
I
after
have
having
too.
brain surgery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It
Right.
is.
And so to now think about yourself pre-surgery to yourself now. That's a big journey.
Yes.
That's a big journey. I'm so
Big
happy for
journey.
you. I'm so glad for you that you were able to, make the right decisions for you that have led to you being seizure free. That breathes a lot of breath of freedom there, just to be seizure free, to choose to do the things that you decide to do. Like, you get to decide now,
Uh,
right?
That's
Um which is quite remarkable.
Mhm.
Yep. So,
the
I guess with talking with your family now, them having seen the journey, and I think it's important to realize where people come from too, because families, if you're a mom, you just don't want to see your son get hurt, your wife, you don't want to see your husband, because better is always an option, but you're always thinking, oh my goodness, what about the worst? I think that's what we're trained to
of
do,
course.
right? Um,
Hmm.
but just for them to look at you then versus now, I'm sure the now one is the one that they prefer, the one who has his life back, who can make the decisions.
So yeah, say in many ways they like me after surgery because I'm sure, like with so many others, there is
Hmm.
a lot of anger that comes with the condition, with any debilitating condition.
Right.
And I can say I'm definitely one of the happiest people I've ever been.
Hmm.
Wow.
Definitely helps out with the mood and quality of life and all the things. It's not
It
just
does.
seizure frequency or seizure freedom. The whole scope of you gets to improve now.
But I have more opportunities to laugh. I mean, that's why I've been there right before surgery trying to make everyone laugh, just in case I didn't get a chance to make them laugh afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure that this probably really changes your perspective on life when you have epilepsy surgery and now you're living a life of being seizure free. I'm sure that it really changes how you see things before and then now.
Hmm.
I'm sure your outlook on life is much more positive.
Much more appreciative of life.
Yes, yes,
I,
absolutely.
I didn't appreciate the little things in life until I weren't able to actually do them.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And I
like
mean, it's
driving.
not even driving,
Uh,
just getting up to go to the bathroom at times because of fear of having an episode and getting trapped in the bathroom.
yeah,
Right.
Having to have, situations, accommodations made because at one point, for me, things really were. I was having multiple episodes a day, and I know
Yeah.
there's others out there they're the same way, and I feel for them,
Right.
yeah,
and
Right.
I just hope anyone and everyone can just find a little bright shining star and follow that.
Hmm.
That, like I said, you've got to control the epilepsy, not let epilepsy control you.
Yeah. That's remarkable.
yeah.
So, I guess for you in closure, um, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um,
Yes, thank
Oh,
you.
I don't know what it was that made you go get that initial haircut, whether it was calming your nerves or, but I feel like this is just remarkable that because there's a lot of different ways that you could have took this, right? And no one would have faulted you for it. You said there's
yeah,
a lot of anger that comes along with this condition. There's certainly a lot of frustration that comes along with, all the limitations and medical restrictions and how it impacts your ability to earn a living and to, take care of your family and to father your kids. No one would have faulted you for
No.
just going and getting that surgery, keeping your mouth shut and just being good. Like you're just good now, and not sharing with anybody. No one would have faulted you for that. But you took it upon yourself to kind of use your story as inspiration for other people. And, I think with this, you'll never know how many people you help. But it was
That's
that
right.
ultimately you were paying it forward, right? And,
Mhm.
I'm not sure also if this podcast helps people. I hope it does. But it's done in the
Uh,
faith of paying it forward, right? And I think that's so
yes.
remarkable that you took a very um, tough is an understatement, that you took
Mhm.
this condition and that you not only made a decision, which would have struck fear in anybody, and you moved forward with it. And now on the other side of this, to be seizure free, doing well, and still making a decision to use yourself for inspiration for other people is just remarkable. So yeah, thank you so
Mhm.
much for being
Uh,
here. I'm so proud of you
of course.
for doing it. You
Thank you.
did great, but you have done such a great job throughout this time of being just a great example of somebody who doesn't give up in spite a condition being so severe. Just didn't give up, and look at you now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, in the end, the one thing that I shared in my news interview, I will share with this. I will share every day all the time that laughter is the best medicine. You
Mhm.
know, we get hurt. What did our parents do a lot of times? They tickled us. And we forget about that pain. You know, it helps. And there's no matter how dark, gloomy it is when you look out, there's always going to be sunshine after the rain.
Yeah.
There's always.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things is that you always stayed positive, and that certainly reflects your outcome. When people are positive, um, it just seems that their recovery process is a little bit quicker too. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your story.
Oh, thank y'all for having me, allowing me to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you did great. You survived it. You survived it. We're
Yes.
done.
I mean,
Yay.
I didn't even have a microphone in front of me this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That
know.
that was more nerve-wracking than anything.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have a little computer screen, not a big giant camera.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that big camera made a big difference.
Yeah.
Did you hear music when you
So
logged in today, James?
I did. I'm looking around. I'm like, is that what?
I heard, was it Morgan Wallen? I
Yes.
think I heard Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
He's
Yes.
like one
I
of
was,
my favorites.
oh, I
Um,
saw him in
Look,
concert.
oh, did you?
He
I
was,
really thought it was my music
No,
because
it's
before
my
I could, I
music.
had my Bluetooth.
It's my